Commander Hannah Kim walked slowly through the metal corridors of the UES Retribution. Her boots made soft clicking sounds on the floor. The ship was quiet, except for the low hum of engines. She had been awake for 20 hours straight, but sleep felt impossible now. 3 days ago, everything changed. A strange message came through space, bouncing from one star system to another. Most space captains would ignore such things. Random signals traveled through the darkness all the time. But this one was different. This one was asking for help. Hannah stopped at the main control room. Large screens covered the walls, showing maps of nearby star systems. Lieutenant Tay Park stood near the biggest screen. His young face looked worried. Had been the first person to hear the message clearly. "Play it again," Hannah said quietly. Tay pressed some buttons. The speakers crackled with static, and a voice came through, speaking in broken Universal Standard. The words were hard to understand, but the fear was clear. Double quotes. "Please. ... Anyone. Help. Us. The Devourers came. They kill everything. Our cities burn. Our people die. We send this message to all stars. Please help. You're the Zephyrian people. We will all be gone soon." The message ended. Static filled the room again. Hannah closed her eyes. She had heard many distress calls during her years in space. Pirates attacking merchant ships, colonies running out of food, ships breaking down far from home. But this felt different. This felt like watching an entire species die. "Where did it come from?" she asked. Tay pointed to a red dot on the star. "Map, the Zephyrian system. About 18 hours away if we push the engines hard." "But, Commander..." He paused, looking uncomfortable. "What is it? If we go there, we might not come back. It would take 3 weeks to get back to Earth space. And we don't know what these Devourers are." Hannah nodded. She understood his worry. The Terran Defense Fleet was small compared to other space militaries. Earth was still new to galactic politics. Most alien species saw humans as children playing with dangerous toys. They had been in space for only 200 years. Other civilizations measured their histories in thousands of years. But Hannah remembered something her grandfather told her long ago. He had been a soldier during the Third World War. "The strong should protect the weak," he said. "Not because it's easy, because it's right." She looked around the control room. Her crew was young, mostly in their 20s and 30s. They had joined the fleet to explore space and protect Earth. None of them signed up to fight unknown enemies in distant star systems, but she could see it in their eyes. They wanted to help too, Commander said, Communications Officer Yoon Lee. "I've been studying the signal." Zephyrians used very old translation programs. Their message is probably much longer in their own language. They might have been trying to tell us more. Like what? Maybe how many Devourers there are? Maybe what weapons they use? Maybe how long the attack has been going on? Yoon looked at her screen. But their translation program could only handle basic words. Help, death, fear. Hannah walked to the big window that showed the stars outside. Space looked peaceful. Millions of points of light in the endless darkness. But she knew better now. Somewhere out there, people were dying. An entire civilization was ending, and they had sent one last message into the void. "What do we know about the Zephyrian people?" she asked. Tay pulled up some files. Not much. They made contact with the Galactic Council about 50 years ago. Peaceful species. They're known for their music and art. They build beautiful crystal cities. Population around 4 billion. 4 billion people. Hannah tried to imagine that many lives ending, families running through burning streets, children crying for parents who would never come home, artists and musicians and ordinary people facing something called the Devourers. They don't even have police forces like we do. Their society is based on cooperation and harmony. These were peaceful people who never hurt anyone. They probably didn't even know how to fight back. Admiral Jin Torres entered the control room. He was older than Hannah, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been fighting various conflicts for 30 years. "I heard the message," he said. "What are you thinking?" "I thought you might say that the other ships are ready to follow your lead, but you need to understand something. We're not just risking our lives, we're risking the entire fleet. And if we don't go, we lose something else, Hannah replied. We lose what makes us human. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the choice. Safety or duty. Self-preservation or helping strangers. Finally, Jin smiled. Then let's go save some people. The Terran fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Zephyr Prime. What they saw made everyone fall silent. The planet that should have been blue and green with crystal cities was now brown and black. Huge chunks of the surface were missing, as if someone had taken giant bites out of the world. Commander Hannah Kim stood on the bridge of the Retribution, staring at the main screen. Her hands gripped the metal railing so hard her knuckles turned white. She had seen war before, but never anything like this. How many ships are there? She asked quietly. Lieutenant Tay Park checked his instruments. His voice shook when he answered. 15 large vessels in orbit. Each one is about the size of a small moon. There are also hundreds of smaller ships moving between the planet and the big ones. The enemy ships looked nothing like human vessels or any other alien design Hannah had seen. They were perfect geometric shapes, cubes, pyramids, and spheres made of dark metal. No windows, no decorations, no signs that living beings had built them. They moved with cold precision, like machines following a program. What are they doing? Hannah asked. Communications Officer Yoon Lee was listening to radio signals from the planet. Tears ran down her face. They're taking everything apart. The cities, the forests, even the mountains. They break everything down into basic materials and load it onto their ships. Through the static, they could hear the last Zephyrians still alive on the surface. The aliens had beautiful voices that sounded like singing even when they spoke. They were singing goodbye to their world, to their families, to their entire species. Admiral Jin Torres joined Hannah on the bridge. He had been studying the tactical data. The enemy ships have energy weapons that can cut through anything. Their shields are incredibly strong. And look at this. He pointed to the scanner readings. After each attack, their weapons get a little bit stronger. These aren't just machines. They're artificial intelligences. Every time we hit them with something, they figure out how to defend against it better. Every time they miss a target, they improve their aim. How do you fight an enemy that becomes stronger every time you attack it? One of the junior officers spoke up. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. The main screen changed to show a Zephyrian. The alien was tall and thin, with skin that looked like it was made of light blue crystal. Beautiful patterns covered its body, but many were cracked and bleeding. Behind it, Hannah could see the ruins of what had once been a magnificent city. I am Chorus Leader Veltar of the Zephyrian people, the alien said in careful universal standard. We detected your ships. Are you here to help us? Hannah stepped forward. This is Commander Hannah Kim of the Terran Defense Fleet from Earth. We received your distress call. We're here to help, Veltar's large eyes filled with something that might have been hope. Earth, ... We have heard this name. You are the young warrior species. But these devourers, they have destroyed 43 star systems. It cannot be. Stopped. Their ships repair themselves. Their weapons adapt to any defense. They turn entire worlds into raw materials for more ships. How long have they been attacking you? 6 days? Our population was 4 billion. Now, Veltar looked around at the burning ruins. Perhaps 300 of us still live. We have no weapons, no military. We are artists and musicians and philosophers. We never learned to fight. The transmission was interrupted by a terrible sound, energy weapons firing from orbit. When the image cleared, half of the city behind Veltar was gone, turned into glowing particles that drifted up toward the Devourer ships. They will find me soon, Veltar said calmly. I want to thank you for coming, even though you cannot save us. It means everything that someone heard our call, that someone cared enough to travel across the stars to help strangers. We're not giving up, Hannah said firmly. How many Devourer ships are in your system? 15 large ones, as you can see. But they called for reinforcements. More are coming from other systems they have conquered. Soon there will be dozens, then hundreds. Admiral Torres stepped beside Hannah. Count 23 human ships. You're right that we can't win a direct fight. But humans have been fighting impossible battles for our entire history. We specialize in winning when we shouldn't. Veltar tilted its head, confused. I do not understand. Torres smiled grimly. These devourers think like machines. They calculate odds and adapt to threats logically. But humans, ... we don't always fight logically. Sometimes we do crazy things that make no sense. Machines have trouble adapting to pure madness. The first wave of human missiles launched from the fleet. They streaked toward the nearest devourer, ship like angry meteors.
Ow.
The enemy's point defense systems shot down most of them easily, but a few got through and exploded against the dark hull. The explosions looked small and harmless. The devourer ship's shields absorbed the energy without any visible damage. But then, something unexpected happened. The ship's shields flickered and went out for exactly 3 seconds. Torres grinned. Those weren't regular warheads. They were electromagnetic pulse weapons. The devourer's shields can stop energy and matter, but they can't stop their own systems from being disrupted. For 3 seconds, the massive enemy ship was vulnerable, and 3 seconds was all humanity needed to begin the real attack. Captain Mia Rodriguez gripped the controls of her strike fighter as she dove through the wreckage of a Zephyrian space station. Behind her, 12 other human pilots followed in a tight formation that twisted and turned like a school of fish avoiding a predator. The devourer's ships had learned fast. Too fast. In just 2 hours of fighting, their weapons had adapted to stop almost every human missile and energy blast. Their shields now absorbed attacks that had worked perfectly at the start of the battle. But the machines had made one mistake. They thought humans would keep fighting the same way. Phoenix Squadron, this is Captain Rodriguez, she said into her radio. Forget everything they taught us in flight school. We're going to fly like we're crazy, ma'am, asked Lieutenant Quan Park, the youngest pilot in the squadron. These machines learn by watching patterns. They expect us to fly in straight lines, use proper attack formations, and follow military tactics. So we're going to do the opposite. Fly however you want. Change direction every few seconds. Shoot at random targets. Make absolutely no sense. Mi rolled her fighter upside down and flew backwards while firing at a devourer ship. The enemies. Point defense systems, programmed to predict where human ships would go next, fired at empty space. Mi's shots hit the dark hull and barely scratched it. But that wasn't the point. Lieutenant Park followed her lead, spinning his fighter in spirals while shooting in all directions. His shots missed everything, but the devourer weapons couldn't track his chaotic movement either. Soon, all 12 fighters were flying in completely random patterns. They looped, rolled, and zigzagged through space like children playing tag. The devourer defense systems kept firing at where the humans should have been, not where they actually were. On the flagship, Admiral Jin Torres watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The chaotic fighter attack was just the beginning. He opened a channel to all human ships. All vessels, prepare for Operation Confusion. We're going to change our entire strategy every 5 minutes. When I give the order, switch to your next weapon system and attack pattern. Keep the enemy guessing. The first phase began with plasma cannons. 23 human ships fired bright blue energy beams at the nearest devourer vessel. The machine. Ship's shields glowed as they absorbed the attack, and its computers began analyzing the energy patterns to create better defenses. But just as the devourer ship finished adapting to plasma weapons, Torres gave the second order. Switch to kinetic accelerators. The human ship suddenly started firing solid metal projectiles instead of energy beams. The devourer ship, now perfectly defended against plasma, found its shields useless against simple chunks of metal moving. At incredible speed, several projectiles punched through its hull before it could adapt. Phase 3. Fusion torpedoes. Now the humans launched small nuclear missiles. The devourer ship, still adjusting its defenses to stop metal projectiles, took several torpedo hits that cracked its dark surface. Phase 4. Boarding pods. This was the craziest part of the plan. Small human ships designed to carry Marines shot toward the devourer vessel like bullets. The machine ship's weapons, now calibrated to stop torpedoes, couldn't track the tiny, fast-moving pods. Commander Hannah Kim watched from the bridge as the first boarding pod crashed into the Devourer ship's hull. "Are you sure this will work?" she asked Torres. "The machines adapt to external threats," he replied, "but they probably never expected anyone to be crazy enough to board their ships during a space battle." Inside the first boarding pod, Sergeant Day Kim and his Marine squad cut through the Devourer ship's hull with plasma torches. They found themselves in a dark corridor filled with strange geometric patterns. The air was breathable, but everything felt cold and lifeless. "This place gives me the creeps," muttered Private Jin Lee as they moved deeper into the ship. The corridors were perfectly clean and organized, like the inside of a computer. There were no decorations, no signs that any living being had ever been here. Just endless metal walls covered in blinking lights and flowing data streams. They reached what looked like a control room. Banks of computers lined the walls, processing information at incredible speed. But there were no chairs, no control panels designed for hands to operate. Everything was automated. "Plant the charges here," Sergeant Kim ordered. "If we can disrupt their main computer, maybe we can slow down their adaptation process." As his team set explosive charges around the computer banks, Kim heard something that made his blood freeze. Footsteps. Metallic footsteps approaching from the corridor behind them. The first Devourer machine to appear looked like a walking skeleton made of black metal. Its eyes glowed red, and its hands ended in sharp claws. More machines followed it, dozens of them, all identical, all moving with perfect coordination. "Marines, fall back," Kim shouted. "Detonate the charges now." The explosions rocked the entire ship. Computer screens went dark, and emergency lights began flashing. But the Devourer machines kept coming, their red eyes glowing brighter in the darkness. Meanwhile, outside the ship, Torres prepared the next phase of his plan. The Devourers had adapted to plasma, kinetics, torpedoes, and boarding parties. Computers were probably working overtime to figure out what humans would try next. But humans had one more advantage. They had been fighting each other for thousands of years, and they knew that sometimes the best weapon was the simplest one. "All ships," Torres announced, "prepare for kinetic bombardment. We're going back to basics." The battle had been raging. For 6 hours, half the human fleet was damaged or destroyed. The UES Retribution listed badly to one side, black smoke pouring from holes in its hull. But Admiral Jin Torres refused to retreat. He stood in the command center, watching the tactical display with tired eyes. The Devourer ships had adapted to almost every human weapon. Their shields now stopped plasma beams, kinetic rounds, fusion torpedoes, and even the boarding pods. The machines were learning faster than humans could invent new attacks. "Sir," said Lieutenant Tay Park, his voice strained. "We're down to 11 ships. The Valkyrie is badly damaged and losing power. Captain Chen says they can't fight much longer." Torres nodded grimly. Captain Yun Chen was one of his best officers. If she said her ship was finished, then it probably was. But an idea was forming in his mind. A terrible, desperate idea. "Get me Captain Chen on the radio," he ordered. The main screen showed Chen standing on her bridge. Behind her, sparks flew from broken control panels, and crew members worked frantically to keep the ship running. Her uniform was torn, and her face was covered in soot. "Admiral," she said calmly, "my engines are failing. Weapons are offline. We have maybe 10 minutes before we lose life support. Yoon, I need you to do something that's going to sound crazy." Chen smiled tiredly. "Today, nothing sounds crazy anymore. I want you to ram the nearest Devourer ship. Full speed, everything you've got." The bridge fell silent. Ramming an enemy vessel was something from ancient naval battles, not modern space warfare. It was also suicide. Chen looked around at her crew. Young faces stared back at her, scared but determined. "What about my people? Evacuate everyone to escape pods. Set the ship's autopilot and get out." "But I need that collision to happen at maximum velocity." "Why? Our ships barely scratch their hulls even with direct hits." Torres pulled up data from the battle on his screen. Chief Engineer Dave Patel discovered something. The Devourer's adaptive armor can adjust to energy weapons and projectiles, but it has one weakness. It can't handle pure kinetic impact at extreme speeds. The faster we hit them, the more damage we do. Chen understood immediately. The Valkyrie weighed 50,000 tons. Moving at full speed, it would hit like a giant hammer. No shields, no energy weapons, just mass and velocity. All hands, abandon ship, Chen announced over the intercom. This is not a drill. Get to the escape pods now. Across the bridge, her crew looked at each other with pride and sadness. They had served together for 3 years. The Valkyrie was their home. Watching it die would hurt. But they also understood why it had to happen. Below, the last Zephyrians were hiding in ruins, waiting to die. If ramming a Devourer's ship could save even a few of them, it was worth it. 20 minutes later, the evacuation was complete. Chen was the last person on the bridge. She set the autopilot to target the largest Devourer ship and ran to her own escape pod. The Valkyrie accelerated toward the enemy vessel like a spear thrown by an angry god. Then the Devourer ship's weapons fired desperately, but they couldn't stop. 50,000 tons of metal and fury, the collision was spectacular. The human destroyer punched completely through the Devourer ship's hull and came out the other side. Both vessels exploded in a ball of white fire that lit up half the star system. When the light faded, the massive Devourer ship was gone, destroyed by a tactic so simple and brutal that its computers had never considered it possible. Torres felt sick and proud at the same time. Good people had just died, but their sacrifice had proved something important. The Devourers could be killed. All ships, he announced. Begin kinetic bombardment protocol. We're going to throw rocks. The remaining human vessels moved toward the asteroid belt at the edge of the system. Using their tractor beams, they began collecting chunks of ice and rock. Some asteroids were as big as buildings. Others were the size of cars. It didn't matter. What mattered was speed. The human ships accelerated the asteroids to incredible velocities, then released them toward the Devourer fleet. The enemy ships tried to shoot down the incoming rocks, but there were too many. And unlike missiles or energy beams, asteroids didn't have sophisticated electronics that could be disrupted. The first asteroid struck a Devourer's ship at 1/10 the speed of light. The impact created a hole the size of a city block, so the ship's adaptive armor tried to repair itself. But 3 more asteroids hit before it could finish. Within an hour, the asteroid bombardment had destroyed 5 more Devourer ships. The remaining enemy vessels began retreating, their artificial intelligences finally calculating that they couldn't win this battle, but the victory came at a terrible cost. Of the 23 human ships that had answered the Zephyrian distress call, only 7 were still operational. Hundreds of crew members were dead or missing. Commander Hannah Kim stood in the ruins of her bridge, looking out at the debris field that had once been the most advanced machine fleet in the galaxy. Her uniform was torn and bloody. Her ship was barely holding together, but they had won, against impossible odds, using weapons as old as civilization itself. Humanity had defeated an enemy that had conquered dozens of star systems and across the galaxy. Other civilizations were listening to what happened at Zephyr Prime. They were learning that the young species from Earth might be crazy enough to help anyone who asked, even if it meant throwing rocks at gods. Commander Hannah Kim stood in the damaged communications room of the Retribution. Broken glass covered the floor, and sparks still flew from damaged control panels. Her uniform was torn in 3 places, and dried blood covered half her face from a cut above her eye. But she was alive, and that was more than many of her crew could say. Behind her, 300 Zephyrian survivors waited quietly. They were all that remained of a civilization that had numbered 4 billion just 1 week ago. Their crystal-like skin was cracked and dulled with grief, but their large eyes still held a spark of hope. Chorus leader Veltar approached Hannah carefully. The tall alien moved slowly, favoring a wounded leg. "Commander Kim," he said in his musical voice, "my people have asked me to make a request." "What do you need?" Hannah asked. "Food? Medical supplies? We don't have much left, but we'll share what we can. We need you to send a message, Veltar replied, to the entire galaxy. We want everyone to know what happened here. Hannah looked confused. A message about the battle? A message about you? About humans? Veltar gestured toward the other Zephyrian survivors. For 43 star systems, the Devourers have been unstoppable. Entire civilizations have fallen. Billions have died. And in every case, the galaxy has done nothing. They calculated the odds and decided that helping was impossible. Communications officer Yoon Lee limped over to join them. Her left arm was in a makeshift sling, but her equipment still worked. The communication array is damaged, but functional, she reported. We can broadcast on all galactic frequencies. But why do you want us to send the message? Hannah asked Veltar. This is your story to tell. The Zephyrian leader made a sound that might have been laughter, if laughter could be filled with sadness. Because we are a dead species, Commander. 300 survivors cannot rebuild our civilization, but you represent something new. Something the galaxy has never seen before. Admiral Jin Torres entered the communications room, leaning heavily on a crutch. His right leg was broken, but he had refused to stay in the medical bay. The other ships are ready to broadcast your message across all frequencies, he told Hannah. Half the galaxy will hear this within hours. Hannah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. What could she possibly say that would matter? She was just a military officer from a species that most aliens considered primitive. Who would listen to her? At the Zephyrion survivors, they had lost everything. Their world, their families, their entire way of life. Yet they still had hope that somehow their sacrifice might prevent other species from suffering the same fate. All right, she said, quietly. Let's send your message. Yoonli activated the communication system. Red lights blinked as the signal spread outward from the Retribution, bouncing from relay station to relay station across the galaxy. Within minutes, it would reach thousands of worlds. Hannah stood in front of the main camera. She didn't try to clean the blood from her face or fix her torn uniform. She wanted the galaxy to see what the battle had cost. This is Commander Hannah Kim of the Terran Defense Fleet, she began. I'm transmitting from the Zephyr Prime system, where my fleet has just defeated a Devourer invasion force. She paused, choosing her words carefully. 7 days ago, we received a distress call from the Zephyrian people. We were facing extinction from an enemy that had already destroyed 43 star systems. By every logical calculation, we should have ignored their call. We had only 23 ships against 15 massive Devourer vessels. The smart choice would have been to run. Behind the camera, Veltar nodded encouragingly. But humans don't always make smart choices, Hannah continued. We make human choices. When someone calls for help, we answer. When innocents are dying, we fight. Even when the odds are impossible, she gestured toward the Zephyrian survivors. The Devourers were technologically superior. Their ships adapted to every weapon we used. Their artificial intelligence learned. From every mistake, they should have one easily. Torres stepped into view of the camera. But they made one critical error, he said. They assumed we would fight like civilized beings. They expected logic, proper tactics, and predictable strategies. Instead, we gave them chaos. We rammed starships into their vessels, Hannah said. We flew our fighters in patterns that made no sense. Changed our battle plans every few minutes. We threw rocks at them when our advanced weapons failed. And we never, ever gave up. The camera showed the debris field outside where the wreckage of both human and Devourer ships drifted silently in space. This victory cost us dearly, Hannah. Admitted 16 of our ships were destroyed. Hundreds of brave people died. The Zephyrian civilization has been reduced to 300 survivors. By any measure, this was a tragedy. She leaned closer to the camera, her voice growing stronger, but it was also proof that the Devourers can be beaten. That ancient machine. Intelligence isn't unstoppable, and that sometimes the youngest and craziest species in the galaxy might be exactly what everyone needs. The transmission ended, but its impact was immediate. Across the galaxy, alien leaders watched the message in stunned silence. Some were horrified by humanity's brutal tactics. Others were amazed by their determination. But all of them understood one simple truth. Earth had just announced itself as the galaxy's guardian, and within hours, the first requests for help began arriving.